Chris, I want to say thank you so much for sharing. And we are going to transition into a bit of a conversation here. We are joined today by Kevin Steinbacher, who's an administrative supervisor for the Central Susquehanna region for PPL Electric Utilities. And as Chris alluded to, also joined by Craig Swineford. He's a veteran services specialist for the Central region for the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. So I'm really excited to have these three gentlemen with us so that we can continue this conversation. I've got some prepared questions that these folks know about. Jenny is, I think, spotlighting us right now. So Jenny, thank you so much for doing that. But I want to make sure we do have plenty of time for Q&A. So just really appreciative for all of you joining us. Craig, we're going to get started with you. Would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your story?
Yes, thank you, Chris. My name is Craig Swineford. I started with the Pennsylvania Department of Military and Veterans Affairs August of last year. Before that, I retired from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I retired. I'm a 4-year Marine Corps veteran, military police, so I have a law enforcement background. When I retired in 2018, I took the first year off and I got bored. Obviously, I was tired. I wanted to get out and do something. I said, I want to do something that I want to do. Working in corrections for 22, 23 years was not a fun gig. It was a nice paying job, but it wasn't fun. I really didn't enjoy it. Now I'm doing what I really want to do, help veterans. I love coming to work in my house every day. I can't beat that. But after I retired in 2018, I started part-time at the Blair County Veterans Affairs Office. I really, really enjoyed that time there because that's when the veterans are coming to you. I worked there 2 days a week. It was very nice. Worked 2 days a week. I was doing claims for veterans, helping them out, helping the spouses out, families. Really loved it. And I was doing that. My supervisor at the time left. So me and 2 other guys in the office, all veterans, all law enforcement, and getting back to what Chris was saying about how veterans, we want to know who we're working for. We want to be able to trust who we're working for and depend on. So we were afraid to bring somebody in because of the politics being played at the county level. So I ended up taking the director position, which I did that for about a year and a half. And then I took the job with the state. So that's pretty much my story. Pretty much one thing I want to say is I've always been law enforcement. My mind's blown away by all the benefits and all the programs for veterans in the community. We never really got to look at that on the other side, but I'm learning daily of all these programs, which is great. So just thanks for allowing me to be a part of this. And I do want to mention back in November, Alex Halper with the Chamber of Commerce down in Harrisburg. I actually have been working with him to try to bridge what we're discussing today. So what I did was like a 1-pager regarding Vet Connect, which Chris already mentioned. And we want to get that with the other Chamber of Commerce's dispersed throughout their newsletters and bulletins, because I feel that veterans are a significant and would be a great benefit to any organization. So that's what's coming down the pike in regard, at least in my region, Region 3, which I cover 15 counties, is all Central PA. Is once we get that letter published in the weekly bulletins, I'm going to be going out to all the chambers in my region, developing relationships and see how we can better serve both the employers, because they're in a win-win situation. They're going to get a good employee, and plus we're helping that veteran. So it's a win-win situation in my eyes.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We get along very well with Alex Halper and the Pennsylvania Chamber. And so we're excited really to get this conversation started in our area today, but we want to build on this. Chris Grill and I, we agreed that this is a conversation we haven't really had in the greater Susquehanna Valley, and we want to talk more. So we welcome a chance to do follow up with you.
Absolutely.
I'm going to jump over to Kevin. Kevin Steinbacher is with PPL Electric Utilities. Tracy Witter very kindly made an introduction for us. Kevin, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got connected to PPL?
Yeah, it's a long story, so I'll give you the short one. I'm a Navy veteran, close to 10 years in the Navy. I got out in '94, and the transition was a lot tougher than I expected it to be. I tell folks, you're in the military, you wear your uniform, at least the Navy, our dress uniforms. You know what I did for a living, you know where I do it because I have a rocker on my shoulder, and you know how good I am at it because I have the medals to prove it. So I bounced around. I worked in DC for a while, decided to come back to central Pennsylvania. It took me 3 years, well, a year and a half, I'll say, actively seeking employment to come back home because I'm from this area. Not a lot of, I didn't know what resources were available to me. So long story short, I bounced around 3 or 4 jobs, actually, had some lucky breaks. And I applied to PPL and I got the job. And about a year after I started, they started a business resource group called PPL Vets. And I jumped on the chance to join. PPL is an outstanding place to work. They have a variety of business resource groups like Chris was talking about, everything from the Christian group to the PPL Vets to everything. I think we have 12 of them. So I jumped on the chance to join PPL Vets, and I feel extremely fortunate to work for an employer that supports us and wants us to self-identify, because that's a big thing too. Like Chris was saying, veterans don't always self-identify as veterans because, again, there's that stigma that that comes along with military service sometimes, or people just don't recognize the wealth of experience and I guess dedication that the military service instills in you, and that teamwork thing is just paramount to anything else. And if you can communicate that in a resume, you're doing good. All right. How was that, Chris?
That's perfect. It prompts a couple more conversations to bring in some other thoughts here. You mentioned self-identifying as a veteran can be problematic. And before the call started, Craig and I were chatting a little bit about the numbers that Chris later presented. The numbers being there's 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania, and we're talking about 32,000 or 14,000 in the Valley and 32,000. So that's a big discrepancy between how many exist and how many we know about and are connected with. Craig, could you talk a little bit about that and the stigma of self-identifying or asking for help?
Well, all veterans realize that we're stubborn. We don't want to help. We don't want to ask for anything. But like you were saying, there's 800,000 veterans in the state of Pennsylvania. Through the PA Vet Connect, the Veterans Registry, we only have like 45,000 veterans registered in the system. And we need to get out, meaning me and my team need to get out and find these veterans, to get them registered, see what services they need, whatever we can do to help. But Vet Connect is going to be a big issue in regards to finding those vets, because even if you're just an advocate, PA Vet Connect, if you're dealing with a financial situation with the veteran, you get into Vet Connect. You click financial, click what county you're in, and it's going to pop up all financial institutions that support veterans, because they all been vetted by our team that actually do want to help veterans and help them get on their feet in regards to whether it's homelessness, whether it's financial, educational, whatever support you need, you're looking for. It's a one-stop shop. It'll list you everything in your county. Boom. That's where that veteran can start to get some help. But yes, we need to get out and find those veterans. I think the reason is because we're so, we don't want to ask for questions or ask for help. We don't want anybody, we want to do everything ourselves, and I think they're hesitant to register for something like that pertaining to the Veterans Registry. I think there's something attached to it, but all it is numbers. And bottom line is we want to know where the veterans are at. And then from that, we can find out, okay, South Central PA, homelessness is a big issue. So we can work on that. Or, because every region of the state's different. Philly obviously has more programs than what we do in Central PA. But we want to help and find those veterans, get them the help they need, and or find them a job they want to work at and be successful. It's a win-win situation.
Craig, I'm going to stick with you for a couple minutes longer here. One of the things that was really intriguing as our conversation got started a few months back on this is it seems like a lot of the things that are out there to help veterans tend to be perceived as handouts, right? We can think of how exceedingly patriotic we become around Veterans Day and Memorial Day. A lot of things going on in the community, but that's 2 out of 365 days of the year, right? So how do we flip that script and make our community more attractive? And here's the way I'm hoping you'll direct the answer to your question. You said that when you left the law enforcement role and moved into what you're doing now, you identified a lot of resources and that you're kind of blown away by. Let me put you on the spot. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest one that I've seen is the VRE program within the Veterans Affairs, Veterans Readiness Employment. That is a huge benefit for that veteran, VRE, Veterans Readiness Employment. And also along within that same program, the special employer incentive. So this is really benefits the employer who wants to hire that veteran. I think they pay up to 50% of the salary for the first 6 months. They'll also provide, if that veteran needs, some technical or, costs for education, on-the-job training, the VA will pay for all that. So it's less of a burden for that company to bring in that vet and train him on the job, which usually tends to land him a job after that 6-month period. It's a great program, awesome program. There's some other websites. Go ahead.
I was going to say, think more on that. I did put you on the spot. I've got a burning question for Chris Grill. If you want to come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
All right, Chris, let me jump over to you. You talked about stigma. You talked about starting conversations with your employees. Seems like a key factor here is ripping off the Band-Aid and talking about self-identifying, what that looks like for veterans. What is an employee resource group? What's a business resource group? And how do you get one of those started?
Yeah, so an employee resource group, lots of names there. Employee resource group, business resource group, affinity group. It's a company-sponsored group within the organization that's just formed around a core identity, right? So Kevin mentioned the different ones they have at PPL. At Geisinger, we've got them for our employees of color, for our employees, our LGBTQ employees, our veterans, women, Hispanic, Latina, Latin, keep going, right? So we've got lots of them, but it's just a group around that common identity to allow that group to come together, and it can provide a variety of benefits to the organization. One, it allows that group kind of like a place to be able to talk about their experiences, maybe the issues or challenges they're facing in the organization as well as in the community, right? So maybe it's just that there's, for some of our other groups, the community doesn't have resources that they're looking for. They want to know more about the community, right? So opportunity for your folks to come together there, talk about that. to network, to build relationships. But we can also use those groups to help push the organization in a direction that would that maybe they see from their perspective, right? So from a veteran perspective at Geisinger, VetNet is our employee resource group, and we help talk to the organization about, like we said, what are the benefits that we can provide to our military employees, right? What are the things that we're seeing in the veteran community that Geisinger could help from a health perspective, because that's our MO, right? So those groups can provide a variety of different resources to the organization, as well as help those employees feel better connected and be able to bring themselves to work and help with engagement and retention as well.
Thanks so much. Kevin, back to you. Can you tell us a little bit about what your business resource group looks like and what goes on in that kind of conversation?
Sure. PPL vets prior to COVID was much more active, and our goals are to reinstitute that this year. Well, I don't hold a position on. I'm not an elected official of the group. I am on this, like, the steering committee, if you would. We do things such as we partner with groups like Valor Clinic that actually operates in our region. I went out and visited them. It's an incredible organization, and they are trying to help homeless veterans transition from homelessness to an apartment. We also we're partnering with Stop Soldier Suicide. We're going to do a lunch and learn probably third quarter of this year. We have a sponsor program. Remember that from the military, where you're going to your new command and you get this letter and it identify the guy as your sponsor. When I reported the USS Eisenhower, which is an aircraft carrier, it was great to have a sponsor because you could get lost. And again, I think that the most important element of a BRG is that fostering that sense of belonging, because we all had that in the military. We all had that camaraderie, and that was really something that I missed when I got out, is that bond. So, and we really work hard to create that bond. And one more thing we did, we take bus trips to Washington, D.C. We sponsor a bus trip with veterans to go, and we hit the highlights of the memorials in Washington, D.C. So that's breathtaking. I've been there, and it's unreal. So I think that's the highlights of what we're doing.
Awesome. Kevin, Craig, you look like you're chomping at the bit. Let's give you a chance to jump back in. But you're muted at the moment. Sorry.
I'm not very good at doing two things at once. I was responding to Laura, and I'm trying to think of things, and I get kind of flustered with this technology. But the other thing I want to touch base on is within every county or every region, there's with the PA Career Link. So if you're an employer who wants to, find some vets, that's the first place I would start within your local area. They have DVOPS, which are Disabled Veterans Outreach Program, and also Levers, which are local, veterans employment specialist or something like that. We call them Levers. But that's the first, as an employer, that's who I would touch base with, because that's who we refer veterans to. So, and they have staff available to work both sides, because they're going to be the one. If you're a company that wants to hire veterans, you'll get the first leads on veterans coming in to that office in order to hire somebody if you're looking to hire them. So that's an awesome program through the PA Vet Connect through the state.
Thanks, Craig. Chris, I'm going to jump over to you here. One of the things you were talking about was things employers can do to be supportive of veterans. Specifically, you mentioned how guardsmen were burning through PTO. But you and I have also had a conversation about some of the challenges when folks start in a position, their service comes back up, they're deployed, and then their certificates are running out or things like that. Could you talk a little bit about some of those barriers and even some legislation that might be on your radar in terms of working with vets?
Yeah, definitely. So there's definitely challenges that employers face and that service members face when, if they're still serving in the Guard or Reserve, and if they're called to service during that time, right? So this is that group, Employer Support for the Guard and Reserve that I mentioned, ESGR. So we know, that there are challenges that employers face when folks are still serving, and we know that there's a federal law out there that's the Uniformed Services Employment and Reemployment Rights Act, USERRA, which provides really a lot of protections for service members when they're called to service, right? So we know that there's some of those challenges that folks face. So the way we kind of looked at it and what we hope to be able to do with ESGR is really make it easier for folks to serve and help them, because we know, when folks are leaving, we know it's a burden on the business, but we also know, that service member is going away to military training or deployment or something else, right? So it's not like they're taking PTO. So how do we help make it easy for that employee to serve and help them as they transition back and forth between, the military and their civilian careers? That's the kind of perspective that we took at Geisinger, as well as, we know that not every employer can do the same thing, but just what are the ways we can, make that as easy as possible. And there's different, tactics and things that everyone can do regardless of who the employer is. And I think, so to the second part of your question was more, certifications and skills that veterans bring from their military service to the civilian world. And I call it kind of the military skills gap, right? Where, so I think about it from a healthcare perspective. My experience in the Army was with combat medics. So I saw, particularly from that perspective, there's a gap between what a service member can do in the military, what they are trained to do, and the certifications that they do or do not receive that are civilian equivalents, right? So in the medical field, there's lots of jobs that medics and things that they can do without a certification that when they come to the civilian world, they can't have that same scope of practice, right? So what are the ways that we can help bridge that gap and help folks transition to a civilian career with a certification that will allow them that same scope of practice and experience within a civilian role? So there's some examples of some legislation that's out there within the Commonwealth to be able to help those service members transition. So specifically in the medical field, how do we get somebody who was a combat medic doing minor surgical procedures on the battlefield to something more than something that better meets that scope of practice and that skill set that they bring with a civilian certification? So how do we help them be able to still do that job, but then also get trained up and get that recognized certificate so that they can further their career path in the medical field? So there's opportunities like that and ways, programs like the Skill Bridge and other things that are out there to help connect and close that gap that veterans may have from what they're able to do in the military to what they want to do now in the civilian world.
Thanks, Chris. Kevin, I see you shaking your head, and I imagine that the skills that you brought from your service translate now into the work you're doing. Could you talk a little bit about that and anything else on your mind there? Because, like I said, I saw that head going. So, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, when I was on active duty, I was a legal man. So what I did was I basically sat in court martials and administrative boards and did a lot of transcription work and so I always thought that it would parlay well into the civilian sector. So I actually did work for a law firm right out of the Navy. I mean, I got out July 10th of 1994 and I started my job the following Wednesday. So yeah, that was one stipulation my wife had is you have to be employed because we got 3 babies. So I got lucky. I went on an interview one day, raced back to Norfolk and deployed for 6 weeks. And while I was gone, my wife actually contacted, it was via ham radio back then, and she actually called me to tell me I got the job. So that was pretty cool. It's probably a little bit different now. So then, again, I got the job because the office manager at the law firm was an Army veteran. So he recognized the value of my 9.5 years of service. And that's key, I think, to a lot of success that I've had along the way, is that getting folks to recognize what we bring to the table as a veteran. And it's not tangible. It's not a tangible skill set that we have, but we still have it just the same. So, and as far as resources, when I was looking to come back to Pennsylvania in 1997, 96, 97, I didn't know about all of this. I don't even know if these existed back then. I will tell you that since that time, I'm awestruck by the amount of resources out there, even learning this, because I've attempted to get involved with veterans. I've worked with the Red Cross with veterans. I've worked with the food bank, the military share. So it's really just getting the word out to what's available. And for a guy like me who wants to be of service to my fellow veterans, how do I, that's also key. Sit down and talk to them, give them my experience and what worked for me in finding a job, or just to sit and talk and share those, here's my frustration. I mean, I graduated from Pennsylvania College of Technology. It took me 10 years, but I did it. And they have a veterans group, that type of thing. Those resources that you get plugged into are just invaluable.
Kevin, thank you so much. I see that we're running short on time here, so I'd like to give Craig an opportunity to share burning thoughts, and then I want to open it up to the folks who have joined us to ask any questions they might have. We're hearing great things about how employers can connect with veterans. We're hearing a lot of great things about resources probably that most of us don't know about. So really appreciate everyone that shared. Craig, you are muted, Craig, just to throw it out there first. So take it away. Closing thoughts for you.
One last thing I do want to mention in regards to veterans. Once a veteran separates from the service and they go back to the state they're going to reside in, I didn't know this until maybe like a month ago, but doing some research, the DOD has to pay unemployment insurance. Okay, so every year that costs the government probably $300 to $900 billion a year. So it's a win-win for everybody, the way I see it. The government wants to reduce that cost so they can use that money for, the DOD can use it to buy missiles, whatever they want to do with it, training or whatever. Employers are going to get a good job, a good worker, and that veteran is going to be able to support the family and be a part of the community. So everybody that's involved is in a win-win situation. And getting back to the transition, when a veteran transitions from service to the civilian, I think the DOD could do a better job in that. Instead of a day before, at least when I was in, they brought somebody in to talk about how to do a checkbook and this is what you need to do and get out. I think the DOD should lengthen that time frame before that veteran separates. Allow him to go back to where he's going to reside, touch base with the county director, the PA career link, get everything squared away of everything that's available to him before he actually separates. Would be a huge, I think would be huge in helping that veteran adjust.
Craig, thanks so much for that thought. We're gonna open up the floor here to anyone who'd like to share. If there's a question out there that's been lingering, if you want to put it in the chat, or if you'd like to simply unmute and share, please, by all means. Questions from our crowd.
Hey, Chris, it's Bob Garrett. I have a question for all four panelists, if they would be willing to take this. And it's actually several pieces. I'll start with you, Craig. You mentioned you were at the Bureau of Prisons. It seems like the Bureau of Prisons is almost like a direct pipeline for veterans. And can you explain that to us? And then for the entire panel, one real easy question, and that is, can you explain what an MLS is in terms that folks will understand and how that affects their hiring decisions. And then my last question relates to veterans healthcare. A lot of veterans bring their ticket with them and have access to the veterans healthcare system, which I can attest is very, very good. What does that mean to an employer, particularly a small business employer looking at hiring somebody and they have somebody who might have some coverage that they might want to consider? They could get a dime out of every nickel if all they did was hire veterans. So my 3 questions. Craig first.
Yes, in regards to the law enforcement, law enforcement love military guys for, just because they're structured, they're disciplined, they follow orders. I know when I was determining on what branch I wanted to go into, I knew I wanted to do law enforcement, and I did my research, and they said Marine Corps is the best branch to go into if you want to go into law enforcement. Well, that's totally, from what I found, it helps. It worked. It worked in my case anyway. But yes, the BOP loves all veterans because of their discipline and the way they were trained, and they know what they're getting. They can handle at least in the correction side of it, the stress of the job, because it's not an easy job. But same with law enforcement. If you're a police officer, the stress of a job, that employer, that police department or the BOP, they understand that you can deal with stress, and it's integral. It's a very important role that the BOP, they love it. They love the veterans. And the state right now is really on a push to hire veterans. So yeah, it's hard to explain, but they're great.
Thanks, Craig. Chris, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll try to tackle the MOS question, but I just want to piggyback off of Craig's point there, and the question about the BOP, right? And there are a lot of jobs, whether it's law enforcement, prison, or any other positions that make that transition to law enforcement. But I think there's one thing I would like to put out there too, is don't pigeonhole a veteran into a law enforcement job just because they're a veteran. So my personal experience, I was in medical operations. I was working in healthcare in the Army. And as I was transitioning, I had multiple opportunities or multiple interactions with recruiters where they heard I was in the Army, and they said, well, we have security positions for you. Right? So don't pigeonhole someone just because of and this will transition into their MOS, right? Their military occupational specialty, which is the military's way of saying, what's the job that you did in the military, right? So 11 Bravo, 11B is an infantryman, right? So there are specific codes we have for the specific job that you do in the military. So if a veteran is on their way transitioning out and you ask them what they did, they might give you alphanumeric code that will relate to the job they did. So I was a 70 Bravo, health services operations, something like that. But while there are correlations between the MOS you have in the military and what you might want to do after the fact, there are very many more veterans who completely pivot when they leave the service and go do a totally different job. And that's one of the things I love seeing with my coworkers here at Geisinger. When we tell veteran stories and I hear about somebody who was a wheeled mechanic in the Army and now they're a finance manager, and how they make that transition from a paralegal or a legal person working then at PPL, right? So we want to really make sure we don't pigeonhole folks. And then I don't know if anyone else has tackled the healthcare question. I think it's a great one, Bob. What I'll tell you, and Craig can probably speak on this too, that we know that only about 30% of veterans are using the VA for healthcare, right? So there's about 20 million veterans in the country. What's my math there? Only about 6 million are using the VA for some of their healthcare, not all of it. And only 8% of veterans are using exclusively the VA for their healthcare. So 92% of veterans are using some or all of the civilian healthcare system. When you talk about it in terms of coverage, there's maybe some of your healthcare is covered by the VA, some not. So it's something for small business employers to explore. And when they're talking to a veteran employee, I guess it's something that you want to kind of tread lightly around when you're talking about offers and employment and stuff. But it is something to be able to talk about and understand how that veteran is utilizing the VA.
Thanks so much. Kevin, thoughts on Bob's question?
Yeah, the Navy didn't have MOSs. We had ratings, a little more descriptive than a series of numbers. Like I was a yeoman when I first started out, worked in the captain's office, and then I transitioned to a legalman after the first 4 years. You know, everything from personnelman to ship servicemen, you know, so it was a little different for us. And I'll say, as far as working in the Bureau of Prisons, when I was looking for a job, my mom pushed and pushed and pushed for me to apply. And I knew in my heart that was not where I wanted to be. So, and I just
not many people want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Seriously.
So, because we had the prison right down the road from me here, in Muncie, and it would have been easy, but I just knew that it wasn't for me. So.
Yeah.
Well, gang, I can't thank you enough. We're right up against the clock here. So I'm going to jump in and say, first off, thank you so much for joining us. I know that we could keep this conversation going easily for another hour, but I think it's super important that, you know, we want to have you back. We want to do this in person. We want to keep this conversation going. If you've been tuned into what the Chamber's been doing, then, you know, we had an economic forecast online. We kept that conversation going after hours. I'd like to invite you that we want to do that later here to keep this going.